Hello, everyone. I'm Senator Tina Smith, and I'm really happy to welcome you to our most current Tea with Tina. And I'm joined today by two really interesting, strong women who are leading their respective organizations and leading our whole state in a way that I think is just so interesting. And I'm delighted to have a chance to talk with you both. We have Beth Gendler, who leads the National Council for Jewish Women, and we have Nausheena Hussain, who leads Rise, an organization dedicated to empowering Muslim women. And I just want to welcome you all thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us, Senator Smith. Really appreciate the opportunity to be in conversation with you.
Well, thank you. And since it's Tea with Tina and it is a beautiful sunny afternoon, let's see, thanks to Nausheena, I have my tea with me today out of this mug that was made by one of my children. And I'm drinking tea that my husband made, iced tea. What are you all drinking today?
I'm drinking water, but I did borrow my daughter's favorite mug, which is probably backwards on your screen, but it says, "I hope you like feminist rants," because that's kind of my thing. So, l'chaim, as we say.
L'chaim, yes.
I have to say I cheated. I actually have an Izzy that I bumped into.
Well, that's okay, because we said tea with Tina, but we felt like people should be able to, whatever is their beverage of choice is all good. So, well, I want to just dive right into it and hear a little bit about hear about your work and what you're doing. I'm so interested in the cross-organizational work, cross-cultural work you're doing. There's so many interesting intersections, what you both do in your individual communities, but then how you're bringing communities together. And why don't you, maybe Nausheena, would you just start and tell us a little bit about Rise and how you came to found Rise? And then I'll turn to Beth and you can tell us a little bit about your work, and then you can describe how you decided to come together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say around 2015, I started to notice just the landscape of leadership in our community, especially of Muslim women, on top of just a rise in Islamophobia and misogyny and racism. And so I wanted to gather a group of Muslim women to talk about these issues. And so we hosted a community conversation to talk about leadership. We talked about civic engagement and community involvement. And one of the things that I heard was Muslim women just did not feel that there was a network or a place where they could make connections and learn from each other. And what was astounding was that there were a lot of Muslim women doing great work, but getting little to no credit. And so we launched a platform called Reviving the Islamic Sisterhood for Empowerment, also known as Rise. And I also actually remember talking with Beth Gendler and asking her about what it's like to lead an organization that is for women, by women, and what her challenges were and her opportunities. And really, she's been kind of like a mentor to me as I've done this work. And so it's really exciting to be with her as a Muslim woman working with another Jewish ally and working on things that are really important to us in female empowerment.
That's so interesting. And I love the focus on bringing women together to sort of understand what their power is, what our power is, and then using the power of networks to kind of lift up our voices. It's a fairly wonderful, fantastic way of thinking about this. And so you look to Beth in the beginning to build a little bit based on her experience. Beth, tell us how you came to be engaged with the National Council on Jewish Women.
I'd love to, but first, I am so unbelievably honored and overwhelmed that Nausheena considers me a mentor, because she's kind of a rock star. So I do remember that first meeting, though, and National Council of Jewish Women's been around for nearly 130 years. So some of the conversations that you were telling me about, that you were having with women, harkened back, I think, to some of the conversations that our founding members were having a really long time ago about amplifying women's voices, having a place at the table, becoming leaders. And there's just such a great deal of synergy there when you have a group of women who are grounded in values, in this case, faith values, but they're really mostly human values, and inspired to do do service and advocacy work. I should say that I'm here representing myself as Beth Gendler and as a part of, as somebody who partnered with Nausheena to help develop this Muslim and Jewish Women of Minnesota coalition. I'm not representing NCJW today, but I'd love to share a little bit about how Muslim and Jewish Women of Minnesota got started.
I would love to hear about that.
It was in the aftermath of a mass shooting, and I ought to have looked this up, but honestly, there have been so many that I truly don't remember which one.
Isn't that tragic to think that gun violence has become such a pervasive part of our community that that it's countless events. It's just so tragic.
Right, and we've almost become numb to it, which is a tragedy of itself. It's an issue that NCJW has been working on for years, so we were immersed in the work, and we had noticed that Rabata, which is a Muslim women's, Nausheena can describe it better, they're focused on prayer and scholarship and scholarship for women. They had issued a statement condemning gun violence, and we thought, that could be a really powerful partnership for us. Let's see if we can get together, and we haven't had much success in passing gun safety legislation. Perhaps by creating this alliance, this allyship that people don't expect, we might be able to really work and make change together. So that's really how it all began. And then it was really in 2016, after the November elections, when our communities were both shocked and hurting, in particular the Muslim community, as news of Muslim bans and Islamophobia and xenophobia were rampant, that we really came together and began to hone our policy work as a collective.
Uh-oh.
It looks like we lost the senator. Oh my gosh. Did we go rogue, Nausheena? What do you want to talk about next?
Let's show them our t-shirts.
You want to see our t-shirts? We just got these. They're really cute. See?
This is the Muslim Jewish Women of Minnesota. We are a grassroots organizing collective of Muslim and Jewish women. We serve the community through different types of givebacks. We also do public policy advocacy work, and we host a annual Muslim Jewish Women's Day at the Capitol, where we have a gender equitable agenda, and we talk to our legislators and really demystify the entire process of what it means to hold your legislators accountable and talk to your elected officials. And one thing we've learned is that women don't do things alone. We bring others along, and that's always exciting. I hope the senator's back.
Are you carrying on without me?
All kinds of things. Yeah.
It's appropriate and ironic that in these virtual days that we occasionally have some technical difficulties. So, but so you were talking about how you got together. You started to really, the collaboration that you started to build together. Just continue on.
So Nausheena took that and ran with it a little bit, but our policy priorities really did evolve beyond gun violence. And
yes,
we feel like when we do show up together, people notice. It's not necessarily expected that you see Jews and Muslims working together because we're not supposed to get along, right? And I think one of the really exciting things about Muslim and Jewish Women of Minnesota and our collaboration and our friendship is that it pushes back against expectations. It denies the forces that are in place that hope to divide us. And personally, I think it's been so enriching for me to make this whole new group of friends and develop this sisterhood. And I think Nausheena and I first bonded when we were complaining about our teenage daughters. I'm sorry, girls, if you're watching, you're great now.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is the kind of how you think about building coalitions in this moment. I feel so strongly that we are in a moment in our history where actually people across differences have a strong desire to build coalitions and to find common ground and to generate that sort of sense of shared experience that is just so powerful in the moments of crisis and tragedy and a concern that we're living through. But there's also these big external factors that are trying to tell us that those coalitions are powerful, that they're not meaningful, that we actually don't have that much shared experience. I mean, that's the whole politics, I think, right now coming out of the White House. And I don't think it represents what's really happening in people's lives. So how did you think about the coalitions that you built here? And like, what do you think, how would you describe the power of that?
So I'll go first, Beth. I think when we look at everything around us, there is a strong sense of just a lot of different kinds of fears, right? There's Islamophobia, there's anti-Semitism. We are seeing the world being moved right now because of Black Lives Matter. And so movement building is very important for us to do the work that we're doing. We imagine a world where Muslim and Jewish women and others and everyone else feels that sense of security and sense of safety. And we understand that we have to do the work in solidarity. We can't be working on one issue and not understanding its impact on other communities. And so that sort of shared solidarity, we understand our liberations are tied to one another. And I think that is really where we are rooted, especially with our faith and our sense of values. And that's what draws us into coalition and really bringing others along in making progress.
Mm-hmm. That's really, yeah, that's beautiful. That
our power is exponential, right? Together we're greater than the sum of our parts. We're small. Both of our communities are small. Our organizations are small. We don't get anything done if we don't do it in coalition with other people. It's necessary.
Yeah.
Well, they
I think about
when Tina disappeared.
I think about the power of the coalition building. You talked about how you came together initially around your concerns around gun violence, and for me, gun violence is it's a public health crisis, a public health emergency. And it's a perfect example of the power of coming together in coalition, right? I mean, before people really started to join together across regions and geography and even political perspectives under that shared concern around gun violence, that the voices that believe in common sense gun safety laws were just drowned out. But when we came together, those voices became amplified, and that's really the story of what you're doing in your organizations.
Absolutely. And I think one other sort of aha moment for us was we wanted to work on issues that were like local to us and where we could impact change within our own, quote unquote, backyards. And in order for us to do that, we really need to understand the landscape. And so I have to just acknowledge that it was, Nancy, who helped us through Protect Minnesota get the proper training in ensuring that we understood what the problem was, what types of legislation pieces there are, and how to go about building that coalition and also holding our elected officials accountable. So it's all in relationship, right? I think Beth and I talk about how we are grounded in relationship and in this sisterhood, and it's not transactional. It is very much grounded in getting to know each other from a human connectedness perspective. And that's what we want to make sure that people understand. We're doing this for other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, too. And I think when you're in relationship and you're in partnership, it's second nature to show up with and for each other in times of crisis. When there's a shooting, when there was the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, for example, I wanted to crawl under the covers and not come out. And Nausheena was the first person who texted me and said, "What are we going to do? We have to do something about this." And we did, and we had a really wonderful event with, I think, thousands of people. We expected it to be a handful of Muslim and Jewish women gathering on the lawn and being together, and developed a life of its own, but that wouldn't have happened without those relationships.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just something that you just do. But something else that we do is we don't just show up together in times of crisis. We also show up in celebration. We show up in each other's homes for holidays and parties and events. We go on walks together when it's 95 degrees outside.
Well, and as you're talking, I totally agree with you. And as you're talking about this, the power of building these relationships, I of course think about campaigns and elections, and how it is important to bring that spirit of building relationships and not just transactions to the work we do around building a movement that is not just about winning elections, but it is about the change that we're going to accomplish after those elections are won. And this is just so important to me as I think about my work as a candidate, but especially as my work as a senator, where building these relationships for the long term allow me to be, truly lift up the voices of people throughout my entire large community of Minnesota. And one of you one of you used this language about kind of having a seat at the table. But when I think about this relationship building, I think about it in this way. I would be so grateful to be able to come to your table rather than giving you a seat at my table, if you know what I mean. The metaphorically, to me, that is the power of saying not, that we have to really truly join together. And I think that we have so much power when we do that. And that gives me a lot of inspiration in this moment where we need inspiration, and then we need to turn that inspiration into action for change.
Absolutely. I absolutely appreciate meeting people where they're at, right? So I think for us, we saw a great divide in the understanding of what the democratic process is and how we engage with our elected officials. And yes, it was like showing up at a day at the Capitol here and maybe, a photo op there, but really developing relationships with our elected officials because like I think about, they live in my city, they live in my neighborhood, they live in my district, and these are, neighbors and residents of the same areas. And so for us, it was like, this is not just about electing people, this is about building with them beyond the election cycle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and we're in a moment where I think there's a high need for mobilizing for change, and being able to do that at the local level and then building up. That's what grassroots politics is all about, and that's the kind of politics that I know best how to practice. So it's just wonderful to have a chance to visit with you both, and I think about the power that you and your organizations have, and the women that you work with every day have to really change the direction of our state and our country.
I think that's been really the most gratifying piece of this work, is to empower women to recognize that power within themselves, to realize that, yes, I actually can have an impact, and it matters. It matters to vote. It matters to have those conversations and those relationships and those meals. I can't believe the conversation is almost over. We haven't talked about food yet, because
I know.
here for our collective and for us, and sharing a meal together. Even with the folks who represent us at the Capitol, has been a really powerful thing for us to do.
Right.
And a great way to build relationships and get things done.
That's right. Well, many thanks to both of you. I'm so glad that we've been able to have this conversation, and I look forward to continuing to talk with you and continue to build relationships with all of you in the days and months and weeks ahead. So thanks so much. And if everybody listening in on this call is interested in continuing to be engaged, I would invite you to go to mobilize.us/Team Tina, and you'll find all sorts of other ways to get involved in this most important moment in our democracy. Thank you so much, everyone.